Alright, the 2 minutes have passed, and it's time for the next video. So, life begins upon conception. What I'm going to try and do in this video is just highlight what I can see as the most logically applicable and consistent point at which we should be able to agree a human life begins. You don't even need to be religious to see this. I'm certainly not. My world is entirely secular. So, to begin, I guess we ask the most obvious question: what is a human being? Now, I find this is actually a difficult thing to describe, but it seems best to just identify what this form is. In that way, I would describe a human being as a multicellular life form of the Homo sapiens genotype, meaning it consists of the DNA that will develop the human musculoskeletal bipedal frame and sexual assignment of XX or XY. So, what is a baby? What is a human embryo? Well, the answer is right there. These are the first stages of a human life. It may not have arms or legs that you're accustomed to seeing of a human being, but that's just a perceptual bias. All its ingredients are there, just developing. When people say it's just a clump of cells, I feel like saying, so are you. Metaphorically, it's true. Literally, however, neither is. Literally, an embryo and a fully developed human being above the age of 25 are both multicellular life forms of the Homo sapiens genotype. Same thing, different stage of development. Metaphorically, though, both are a clump of cells. But this is a crude metaphor as far as metaphors go, as it implies there's a lack of function when both are functional. A thrombosis is what you're looking for when referring to a clump of cells. It really is just a dysfunctional clump of matter that necessarily must be destroyed before it causes any damage. An embryo, however, is a developing human being, and this development continues long after birth. That alone strikes out any argument that it's not a human life if it's still developing, because you're not going to claim a toddler is not counted as having a human life. And as far as the concept of ownership goes, the ownership of a child belongs to the mother and the father. However, in this way, what is meant by ownership is responsibility. And no, the mother should not get to have primary say over the child. It's not solely hers. It doesn't matter if it's grown in her body. She consented to sex, she consented to conception, which means it's not her property so much as it is her responsibility. And it's got to develop in someone's body. That's just the way it is. And what do we call a human being who gestates and gives birth to a child? That's right, it's called a woman. Now, yes, the child is also the man's responsibility, but just about everybody is already on board with that message. More than on board, men are told that's how it's going to be, whether you like it or not. So all I'm proposing is that we treat women with the same accountability of which we treat men. Life begins upon conception is the most consistent point that can be argued. To try and argue life begins after birth is to say the baby didn't have a life just a few minutes before when it was still in the womb. Yet somehow it physically existed and acted like a living thing. To say instead it doesn't have a life in the womb because it's still dependent on its mother to live is to say toddlers and 10-year-olds don't have a life. They're also dependent on their mother to live. And to say something like it's not even conscious yet, to justify disregarding its life, is to say you can disregard the life of a coma patient because they're not conscious and might never be. These sorts of arguments hit a big fat wall of contradiction that require a degree of mental gymnastics to justify. When you can just say a human life begins at conception, because it's genetically human, whether it's 1 day old or 9 months. It's not going to be anything else, and it is a living thing. Now, as far as I'm concerned, you can still make arguments for supporting abortion rights that are inclusive of recognizing life upon conception. For example, if the baby is threatening the mother's life. Realistically, claiming it's not a human life is a fallacious dehumanization to justify abortion. It's a tacit admission you know you couldn't justify abortion if it were a human life. However, we recognize not all killing is wrong. Most often this is in regards to defending your own life, or defending the lives of others. And I do think this. If a mother is going to die because of the child, and we know we can save her with medical intervention, then she maintains the right to decide whether she preserves her life or sacrifices it. She absolutely should not be forced to sacrifice when we have the ability to save her. A life is going to be lost either way. Let her decide what she wants. And of course, it's her life to sacrifice, not anyone else's. As for autonomy, I can justify abortion rights in rape cases. This is actually a legitimate infringement on the woman's autonomy. That conception was not consensual. It was forced on her, and having the ability to medically intervene, I think we should allow the woman the choice to keep the baby or not. For me, my stance on being against elective abortions and consent to sex is consent to conception is I just want women to be more responsible. Women living up to the same responsibility that we enforce on men is important for the moral character and cohesion of society, of human relationships. And it will probably help that declining birth rate as well. But at the end of the day, it's not about controlling women. It's holding them to a standard of accountability for their choices. My body, my choice, my responsibility. That's that last little bit there has been missing from that virtuous statement for so many years. This is about taking responsibility for your choices under typical conditions where there is no threat to one's person. A woman who doesn't want to keep a baby that was conceived through rape, for example, is not being irresponsible. She just wants control of her body back. Like I said, we know we can intervene, so we should let her have the option of deciding whether or not to keep it. And we actually do owe the rape victim our moral cooperation first, not the baby or the rapist, for that matter. To say she should keep that child whether she likes it or not is a second infringement on top of what the rapist already committed. But this is where I draw the line. I do have some sympathies for abortion in respect to severe disability, but this is one that I'm still on the fence about. If there was a cure for such ailments, then I could easily join the pro-life camp there. But I know I would not want to be in that state myself. It's not good, and I don't think you're more virtuous than anyone else for caring. That actually rubs off on me as a bit like attention seeking. So I'm comfortably staying on the fence in that regard, with a leaning towards pro-choice on that matter. Outside of this, for the 99% of abortions that are of consensual conceptions of perfectly healthy babies that are of no threat to anyone, I'm pro-life. I'll say this again, my body, my choice, my responsibility. We need people to be more responsible in society, not less. But that's all you're getting from me this episode. I expect my position will make people on both sides very unhappy. Maybe. But this is just what I can discern as logically fair and accurate to reality. So that's the position I hold. But who knows? My opinion could change in time. I used to be completely pro-choice. and without any conservative influence whatsoever, just looking at things from my own philosophical perspective, I came to the conclusion that, yeah, you chose to do something, you got to take responsibility for it. So, yeah, we'll see how things go. I got a couple of ideas for my next video, my next two videos. I was going to do one on weight loss. That seems actually pretty important and kind of urgent. I might do that one next, maybe. I would have done it now, but the script's only half finished. But yeah, I'm prattling on at this point. Time to edit these and upload them. And see you in the next episode.